name's Eric Ho. I'm one of the co-founders of NYC Pickleball. I'm here in Woodside, Queens, New York. I grew up in New Hampshire, but I've been here in New York City since 2011, so pretty much a New Yorker at this point. Well, I discovered pickleball in high school. So in like 2006, they had a PE program, up in New Hampshire, a gym unit, just like 1 month of pickleball with the wooden paddles on the gym floor, and that was my first exposure to it. And I played on the high school tennis team, so it came naturally to me. But I didn't think about pickleball for another like 10 years until my mom started playing in like 2016. So every time I went and visited, she'd get a paddle in my hand, we'd hit it around for a bit. And then, of course, when pandemic hit, I'm sure this is a common story. That first summer, we were looking for something to do around outside. So like Frisbee or football. And then we came across a Modell's that was going out of business, a sporting goods store. And all they had were like baseballs, figure skates, and then like a little section of pickleball gear. So we picked up 4 paddles. It was me, my wife, and my sister-in-law, and we were like hoping and praying that one of our friends would join us for this crazily named sport. And we would just play on a tennis court here in New York, and we'd set up like little cones to mark the dimensions and use the tennis net. And yeah, that's how we got started playing pickleball. When we first started playing in New York, it was literally just us and a couple of friends. It was really challenging to find other players. And then when we, over the course of that winter, we did a road trip to go visit Ray's family. They're down in Memphis. And that's when we kind of got to experience a much more mature sort of pickleball community where they had some had dedicated nets and lights, and they had open play rotations. They had much higher level of players than what we were experiencing in New York City. And we were down there for about 2 months, and we kept delaying our trip back to New York because we were like playing every single day, and we were like, how do we go back to New York City knowing that like we're gonna have to start all over again, and like finding a community, like finding these players. Eventually we did go back, and we did find some smaller groups through word of mouth. But we were organizing, like the 3-5-4-0 games with like 20 or 30 people. And then I started, thinking, oh, maybe I should get into coaching, because I was progressing, rather quickly, because I think we took a very like analytical mindset to learning how to play. It wasn't just like, let's just hit the ball back and forth. We were like watching Tyson's videos from like, week 2, like we were practicing dinks, just like us 3 on the court. And so we were drilling a lot, and we were getting a lot better rather quickly. And so I started looking at getting certified. And then my wife, Ray, she was like, okay, if you're going to coach on the side, then you need a website. And I was very skeptical at first. I was like, oh, Instagram, maybe like word of mouth, that should be fine. And she was adamant that we got a website. And so I got a personal website, but then while she was looking, she saw that nycpickleball.com was available. And this was October of 2021. So she grabbed that domain, weren't sure what we were going to do with it. Couple months later, after I'm certified, I write up this guide on like where to play in New York City. So like there's different team reach codes, Slack groups, whatever. And I didn't think much of it. And when it went live, like that link, that guide got shared in many different places, and all these groups just started getting dozens and dozens of new joiners. And it made us realize that like the demand and people looking for places to play in New York City was always there. It was just the resources were never there to help find it. And so once that started happening, it clicked for us. We're like, well, why don't we just take that URL that we have that's been sitting for like 4 or 5 months, and why don't we just throw the guide on there? And so that was March of 2022. And just kind of overnight, it started gaining a lot of traction, a lot of visits. And it was just perfect timing, because the spring and the summer of 2022 in New York City just really, really exploded. So originally, nycpickleball.com, that was the website. It was just a resource. And then later that summer, we started hosting Duper rating events. We partnered up with Duper because I felt like leveling was really important, especially as new players were coming in. So we started helping players get rated, holding tournaments. And then now it's transformed into like we're onboarding more coaches onto our platform. We are running leagues out of some indoor facilities, and yeah, that's kind of the genesis of NYC Pickleball. We have like our guide on our website, but like the number of makeshift courts that are kind of popping up all over the city, like whether it's chalked or whether it's spray painted or taped, right? Like every neighborhood, I'm sure every pickleball player in New York, every time they see like a handball wall that's empty or like an asphalt that's like cracked and no one's using it, everyone's like, can a court go there? Can a court go there? And like it's challenging, and yet at the same time people are making it a work here. So it's evolving like on a weekly basis, because you have your home courts that people make, the DIY courts, and then you have like the parks and what they're doing, and then you have the private public partnerships that are also doing work. So the courts are coming, but the demand and the people, that's a never ending sort of wave of new joiners that's creating a lot of interesting problems that we're trying to help solve. When we started the guide and the Slack group, but the Slack group is like how we used to organize like the free kind of outside open play. I think we're just helping people find where to play and connecting players. And I think now, because that's been so successful, we've shifted our kind of focus to how do we help every player, no matter what level you are, find the best games possible, right? And I think it's helpful that like I'm about a 5.0 player, Ray's about a 4.0 player. So it's helpful that like we're both relatively high level players, so we can help, beginners all the way to visiting 5.0s, visiting pros, like connecting them with the right network and plugging them into the right games. So that's been our main focus, especially given the fact that like we started off with the duper events, we started off with tournaments, and now leagues. Like the leagues are highly structured and highly leveled, so that we want to see people progressing over the course of those 7 weeks, right? Like, yes, you can have fun playing games, but we also feel like the improvement, the incremental improvement that a player can experience by really understanding and like learning the nuances of the game is also a highly enjoyable aspect of pickleball. And I think that's kind of our angle that we're approaching, or like we're trying to differentiate ourselves a little bit from like other organizers by really focusing in on optimizing for the best games possible. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of our core thing, like best games for all players is what we're looking for. See, I mean, obviously court scarcity is a challenge. Like, that's why all of our organized, like formal organized sort of paid events are run inside this facility that we partner with. New Heights is this nonprofit like youth basketball program in Brooklyn, and so we rent courts from there. But we've been partnering with them on like open plays and helping them build out their pickleball program, and so they've been great to work with. But besides that, there's like everyone's sharing space. Everyone's sharing a limited amount of space. Pickleball's growing exponentially, but not everyone's going to love it for totally fair reasons, right? Whether it's handball players that are losing their wall space, or tennis players that just want to hit against the wall. Like, as much as we can try to convince everyone to come and join and love pickleball, like inevitably you're not going to win over everyone. And so I think managing the like explosive growth in players and like the court space, and helping local organizers figure out how do we best structure open play to create a good experience for everyone. And at the same time, like it's kind of like the Wild West here, because as we said, like we're setting up courts kind of anywhere, right? And so when it's a first come first serve situation, you're facing with different dynamics of like, okay, well, how do we open it up to people? How do we allow people to get like good level games, and how do we balance like these two things, and people utilizing the space in other ways? So I think that's the biggest challenge, and making sure like a community can stay cohesive and together when we're all kind of crammed into like a tiny little space. The court surfaces are also a challenge. If you saw some, I don't know if you saw like one of those reels recently. It was one of those guys who was like a pickleball coach is like, you got to dink your donks and whatnot. But like it went viral, and you look at the courts, it's literally like weeds growing out of like every other crack. But like there's like 20 courts there, right? And not all the courts are correctly dimensioned, but there's still people out there playing. And so I think that's kind of the essence, and that's in Williamsburg. And that's the essence of New York pickleball. It's like people will play anywhere. And it doesn't matter like the condition of the courts or the surface. And that's just how desperate we all are. And I think it makes for better players too, because like that hand-eye coordination, if it bounces on random crack, you have to really stay focused that entire time. So, bring us out to a smooth surface court, then the game's a lot easier. Each neighborhood has its own unique culture, right? Like you go to Central Park and the North Meadow handball courts, where like their courts are 2 feet short, and um, I think every community has its own distinct kind of leadership and community structure, but I think generally speaking, everybody's open because they know that's how all of the communities got started. Like people walking by, seeing what is this, and then just jumping in, like people inviting them to join in. So I do think that every community that we see in New York City is super inviting, and that might be common to pickleball in general. But um, I think let's see. I think people are used to hardship in New York. So they're used to the struggle. Like we had 2 courts that were created by the Parks Department in West Village, and then there was disagreements with some of the parents. I don't know if you saw those news articles, but those courts got taken away, and the pickleball players accepted the parks decision, but they shouldered on and found other places to play. And there are a lot of people out there hustling, like trying to make pickleball work for as many people as possible. So I think the hustling culture is definitely prevalent in all the different New York communities. So I'm still coaching. I'm coaching about 3 days a week now. But then the rest of the time, I mean, it's there's just so many things that we could be doing and that we are doing. And so both Ray and I think the rest of the days is like it's funny. I left my 11-hour a week desk job, and now I find myself like at a desk Mondays through Wednesdays, or Sundays through Wednesdays, like catching up on emails, responding to questions. I think with the facility that we're working with, like, making sure that the open plays are filled up, or making sure the court bookings are going smoothly. Um, yeah, so like early part of the week, a lot of kind of admin things, meeting with different people in the pickleball community and pickleball space. And then Thursdays through Saturdays, those are kind of like my heavy coaching days where I'm on court for like 4 to 5 hours a day. Um, and then a question that a lot of people ask is like, when do you play? Do I ever play anymore? And the answer is yes and no. Definitely don't play like the 5 days a week that I used to when we first started. But I do probably try to carve out 2 sessions a week where I'll meet up with some people, either drill or play some games, or even if I just pop down to a random like community, I'll hop into a couple games just to see people and say hi. Like a year ago, there's no way we would have imagined that like we're in this position where like going into this full time and doing what we're doing now, because so many of our opportunities just kind of came up by happenstance. I think like starting in last summer, like those Duper events, Duper just kind of reached out to us and wanted to see if we wanted to partner, and then all of a sudden we were doing like one rating event a month, and then the space that we're working with now, they reached out to us to get their pickleball programming up and running, and now we're on our 3rd season of leagues that are highly successful, and that people keep coming back each season. We've had people coming back like the winter, spring and summer season as well. So um, I mean, I think we're just gonna keep pushing to like keep improving, helping players improve and make New York City like an actual destination for pickleball. A year ago, I think it would be, you'd be Austin, Florida, California, maybe, but like I think New York is really churning out some strong players. And I think to be able to help that base grow and help those players develop and help those players find each other and make New York like a real center of pickleball would be, um, that's kind of a big kind of guiding star for us. Like, how do we just continue to improve the games and improve the players experience with pickleball in general. Yeah. Everyone talks about the pier. The pier is obviously a great spot down in Brooklyn Heights. Like, you have the sunset, you have the water, you have the Statue of Liberty, and Pier 2 was probably one of the first public courts with dedicated nets. They have 4 dedicated nets there. There are a few out in like deeper Brooklyn. Fort Hamilton was honestly, probably the first city court that had 4 courts, and they were working on that project for like 2 or 3 years. But Pier 2, it's hard to beat those sites. In terms of like our stomping grounds were like Soul Lane Playground down on the Lower East Side. That's where we were playing our games well before like NYC Pickleball was anything. And so we had a great group of players down there on 3 courts. And then I would say like North Meadow handball courts, the one in Central Park, like they were OGs. Like they'd been playing well before we started playing, and they have a long, strong community there of players, and they're there all day long, right? And the challenge with some of the other locations that like you have to bring your own net, right? So someone needs to coordinate, hey, I'm bringing a net, looking for XYZ players, like this type of game for 2 or 3 hours. North Meadow handball courts, they have nets there from from dawn till dusk, basically. You can go there and there'll always be players there, and like it's probably the most diverse group of players that you'll see in New York City. And recently there was like an article in New York Times about this paddleball player that's still kind of like holding down one of the courts there on the handball courts. But like, you have handball players, paddleball players, tennis players, like all of the different sports have come and really kind of coalesced into this pickleball community in Central Park. And so I feel like you got to pay your respects there. That's almost like one of the meccas of pickleball in New York City. So yeah, I would say those 3 are worth visiting. And I think like, the website, the Slack, our Slack community is like well over 6,000 people now, and across all different neighborhoods. So anyone watching or listening, definitely join the Slack, find your neighborhood, find your group. Instagram, we just passed 5,000. So like it's yeah, I don't know. It's been a wild year of starting from nothing to now having this like really strong community of pickleball players here. So just kind of really proud to see how far we've come. I want to shout out Brooklyn Aces first. They've Samin and their team, they've come out and sponsored our leagues for this season. So they've been really supportive of what we've wanted to do, and we've been really excited about just like having kind of a home team to root for an MLP. We've had a lot of sponsors for different events, but like Just Paddles has been one of our kind of partners for a very long time from the very beginning. Fromouth as well. I'm a sponsored coach for Yola, so shout out to Yola and Tom for working with us there. Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of people that we've worked with. House Pickleball Paddles, they're one of the brands here in New York City, and they've been great about helping to kind of bring demo paddles for some of our beginner clinics. And then shout out to Chris Olson and the Pickleball Studio and Pickleball Will. Like we've had a pretty good relationship, online the last couple of years, just talking about like being content creators or just like people in this pickleball space and having it go full time. So it's been great to kind of have them in the corner, bouncing ideas off. One more, Cayman Steve. I don't know if you follow the chats in YouTube, but um, Cayman Pickleball, they have like a facility coming on, and I think it's opening now. And this guy Steve, who's been part of the YouTube chats and some of the discords, like I think both of us left our jobs around the same time to dedicate to pickleball fully. So Steve has also been a great person in our corner to to bounce ideas off of. Um, let's see, anyone else? I think I think that's it off the top of my head. I feel like it's like the Oscars. You're gonna play me off with the music soon.